The Fateful Night, the story of American Airlines Flight 1420. On the stormy evening of June 1st, 1999, American Airlines Flight 1420 was scheduled to fly a routine route from Dallas/Fort Worth International Airport, DFW, to Little Rock National Airport, now Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport, in Arkansas. Operated by a McDonnell Douglas MD-82, the flight carried 139 passengers and 6 crew members, led by Captain Richard Bushman, a senior pilot with over 1,000 flight hours, and First Officer Michael Original. However, what began as a standard flight soon turned into a nightmarish sequence of events that would change aviation safety forever. The calm before the storm. The departure from Dallas was delayed by nearly 2 hours due to severe thunderstorms brewing along the route. Passengers, weary from the wait, boarded the flight unaware of the weather challenges ahead. Captain Bushman, aware of the delays and under pressure to complete the flight within duty time limits, decided to proceed to Little Rock, despite worsening conditions. As the MD-82 cruised toward Little Rock, the weather deteriorated. The flight crew, guided by onboard radar and air traffic control reports, was aware of the intense storms surrounding the airport. Lightning illuminated the skies, and a sense of urgency grew in the cockpit. The captain and first officer discussed the risks, ultimately deciding to attempt the landing before the storm worsened further. The approach to chaos. By the time Flight 1420 began its descent into Little Rock, the storm had moved directly over the airport. The runway was drenched by heavy rain, and wind gusts reached alarming speeds, making the approach treacherous. The crew opted to land on runway 4R. Despite the challenging conditions and limited visibility, as the aircraft descended, the cockpit became a hub of intense decision-making. Warnings of wind shear echoed through their instruments, adding to the pressure. First Officer Original struggled to monitor the instruments while assisting with navigation, and Captain Bushman focused on executing a safe landing amid the chaos outside. The landing that went wrong. At 11:50 p.m., Flight 1420 touched down on runway 4R. However, the landing was far from smooth. The rain-soaked runway reduced friction, and the aircraft's spoilers, critical for slowing down after touchdown, were not deployed promptly. Compounding the issue, the brakes and reverse thrust were insufficient to stop the plane on the slick surface. The MD-82 hurtled down the runway at a high speed. Realizing they were running out of room, Captain Bushman shouted commands in an attempt to regain control, but it was too late. The plane overran the end of the runway, smashed through a chain-link fence, and skidded into the banks of the Arkansas River. The fuselage broke apart, and flames erupted in sections of the wreckage. The aftermath of the crash. Inside the cabin, chaos reigned. Passengers screamed as debris and smoke filled the air. Some scrambled to escape through emergency exits, while others were trapped amid the wreckage. The flight attendants, despite their injuries, worked heroically to assist passengers. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, battling the storm and unstable terrain to rescue survivors. Of the 145 people on board, 11 lost their lives, including Captain Bushman. Many others suffered serious injuries, with some requiring extensive medical care. The aftermath left survivors and rescuers deeply shaken. Passengers described the terrifying final moments, the screeching of metal, and the desperate struggle to escape. Despite the tragedy, many credited the quick response of emergency crews and the actions of the flight attendants with saving lives. The investigation and findings. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB launched a thorough investigation into the crash. Over months of analysis, they uncovered multiple contributing factors. Time pressure. The captain's decision to proceed despite the weather was influenced by duty time restrictions, which limited how long the crew could legally fly. The NTSB also highlighted the airline's operational pressures and gaps in training as indirect contributors. Severe weather conditions. The weather surrounding Little Rock National Airport on the night of June 1, 1999, played a pivotal role in the tragic events of Flight 1420. A powerful thunderstorm system had settled over the region, producing intense lightning, heavy rainfall, and strong, unpredictable wind gusts. This type of weather is classified as a Level 6 storm, the most severe on aviation radar, indicating an extremely hazardous environment for flight operations. As Flight 1420 approached the airport, the crew received multiple warnings about the worsening conditions. Their onboard weather radar displayed ominous red and magenta returns, signaling severe turbulence and potential wind shear. Despite these warnings, the pilots, feeling the pressure to land due to delayed schedules and duty time restrictions, opted to proceed with the approach. As the aircraft descended, the storm's ferocity became more apparent. Wind shear advisories, sudden changes in wind speed and direction, posed a significant threat to the aircraft's stability during landing. In addition, the heavy rain reduced visibility to dangerous levels, making it nearly impossible for the pilots to see the runway. Lightning strikes illuminated the sky, creating a disorienting environment in the cockpit and a palpable sense of unease among passengers. The rain also caused runway contamination, creating a slick surface that greatly diminished the aircraft's braking efficiency upon touchdown. This combination of poor visibility, turbulent winds, and a wet runway significantly increased the likelihood of an overrun. In hindsight, aviation experts argue that the weather conditions that night should have prompted the crew to either delay the landing or divert to an alternate airport with safer conditions. However, the decision to proceed proved catastrophic, as the storm rendered even a skilled crew's best efforts ineffective. The rules for today suggest that planning for storms of this caliber was widely regarded to be expensive, and that lessons should be delayed until the next round of hosting. This case highlights the deadly consequences of attempting to operate in extreme weather conditions and underscores the importance of adhering to weather advisories and safety protocols even when faced with external pressures. Pilot error. Pilot error emerged as one of the critical factors in the crash of American Airlines Flight 1420. While the severe weather conditions posed significant challenges, certain decisions and actions by the flight crew ultimately compounded the situation, reducing the chances of a successful landing. Such innovative approaches allowed the flight crew to reduce the chances of a successful landing. The decision to land despite warnings. Before initiating the final approach into Little Rock, the flight crew was well aware of the severe weather conditions. Both the onboard radar and air traffic control repeatedly warned of intense thunderstorms over the airport. Despite these warnings, Captain Richard Bushman decided to proceed with the landing. A key factor influencing this decision was time pressure. The crew was approaching the end of their legally allowed duty time. Diverting to an alternate airport would have further delayed the flight, likely resulting in cancellations or extended ground operations. This pressure led to a critical misjudgment in prioritizing schedule over safety. Fatigue and cognitive overload. The delayed departure from Dallas meant the flight crew was working late into the night, likely experiencing fatigue after a long day of operations. Fatigue can impair cognitive function, slowing reaction times, and reducing the ability to process multiple inputs effectively. This likely contributed to a series of errors in judgment and execution during the high-stress landing attempt. Additionally, the the cockpit environment was marked by a high cognitive workload as the crew dealt with multiple factors: monitoring the storm, communicating with air traffic control, navigating the descent, and configuring the aircraft for landing. In this intense environment, critical actions were either overlooked or delayed. Failure to deploy ground spoilers. One of the most significant mistakes occurred after the aircraft touched down. The ground spoilers, designed to disrupt airflow over the wings and transfer weight to the wheels for effective braking, were not deployed. This oversight drastically reduced the effectiveness of the brakes and reverse thrust, making it nearly impossible to stop the aircraft on the slick runway. The ground spoilers were in armed mode, meaning they should have deployed automatically upon landing. However, for unknown reasons, they failed to activate. This required manual deployment by the pilots, a step that was either forgotten or delayed in the chaotic moments after touchdown. Mismanagement of braking and reverse thrust. As the aircraft hurtled down the runway, the crew attempted to apply maximum brakes and reverse thrust. However, due to the wet runway, the brakes were far less effective than usual, and the reverse thrust alone was insufficient to slow the aircraft. The delay in realizing the spoiler issue compounded this problem, leaving the crew with few options as they approached the end of the runway at high speed. Communication breakdown in the cockpit. The investigation also highlighted lapses in cockpit resource management (CRM), the communication and coordination between the captain and the first officer. Clear and decisive communication is essential in the critical moments of approach and landing. However, the cockpit voice recorder revealed instances of confusion and hesitation. For example, the first officer was managing the complex weather radar while also assisting with navigation and checklist procedures, leading to potential distractions. Captain Bushman, though experienced, may have been overly focused on landing the plane despite the deteriorating conditions. This decision left little room for alternative strategies, such as a go-around or diversion. The go-around decision that never happened. One of the most crucial missed opportunities was the failure to initiate a go-round when the approach became too unstable. A go-round is a standard procedure in aviation, allowing pilots to abort a landing attempt, reconsider for another try, or divert to a safer location. Despite the poor visibility, wind shear, and rain, the crew continued their descent instead of opting for this safer alternative. Lessons learned from pilot error. The tragic outcome of Flight 1420 underscores the importance of sound decision-making under pressure, adherence to safety protocols, and effective cockpit communication. In the aftermath of the crash, aviation authorities and airlines introduced several changes to address the issues identified in this incident, including enhanced CRM training to improve communication and decision-making between flight crew members, weather awareness protocols, stricter guidelines for evaluating landing conditions during severe weather, boiler deployment procedures, improved training and checks to ensure proper configuration and manual deployment if necessary. Go-around emphasis, reinforcement of the importance of go-around decisions when conditions become unsafe.